The message on the screen was glowing blue in the darkness. It didn't go to the police. It didn't go to a social worker. It didn't even go to the person it was meant for. It read, "Grandpa, help. Marcus hurt Mom. She is on the floor and won't wake up. There is blood. He is breaking the bathroom door. Please come now." Leo Vance was 10 years old, but in the harsh fluorescent light of the motel bathroom, he looked 6. He was small, his ribs pressing against his skin like a birdcage, his chest heaving with the shallow, whistling breaths of an asthma attack he didn't have the medicine to stop. He was curled into a ball in the dry bathtub of room 104. The porcelain was freezing against his legs through his thin pajamas, the ones with the faded rocket ships. But the cold was the only thing keeping him from passing out. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. If you received a text like that from a stranger, a child begging for their life, would you answer? Or would you think it was a scam and delete it? Hit that subscribe button if you believe that ignoring a cry for help is the only real sin in this world. Let us know in the comments. Would you have answered? Leo stared at the phone. It was a cheap, prepaid model. The screen cracked like a spiderweb from the time Marcus had knocked it off the table last week. His thumb hovered over the send button. His hands were shaking so violently that the phone looked like a blurred object in the dim light. Outside the bathroom door, the world was ending. That's what it felt like. Not an argument, not a fight. An ending. The Last Stop Motel lived up to its name. It sat on a forgotten stretch of highway where the streetlights had burned out years ago, and the only traffic was long-haul truckers trying to beat a logbook deadline. Room 104 smelled of stale cigarette smoke, mildew, and tonight, it smelled of copper. Leo pressed his ear against the cold tile of the bathroom wall. He needed to hear if she was still moving. Thud. Something heavy hit the floor in the main room. It sounded like a sack of wet cement. Then, silence. "Get up, Shelley," a voice growled. It was a voice that sounded like gravel grinding in a mixer. Marcus. They called him the Bull down at the pool hall, but not because he was strong. They called him that because he was dumb, heavy, and liked to break things that couldn't fight back. "I said get up!" Leo flinched. He clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle the wheeze building in his throat. His lungs felt tight, like someone had wrapped a leather belt around his chest and was pulling it one notch tighter every second. "Don't cough," he told himself. "If you cough, he remembers you're in here." But Marcus hadn't forgotten. "I know you're in there, you little rat," Marcus shouted. The bathroom doorknob rattled. It was a cheap lock. A piece of tin that wouldn't hold against a stiff wind, let alone a 250-pound man fueled by cheap whiskey and the rage of losing $500 on a horse race he swore was rigged. Leo looked at the phone again. He had to text Grandpa. Grandpa lived 3 hours away. Grandpa had a shotgun and a truck. Grandpa had told him last Christmas, "If he ever touches you again, Leo, you call me, day or night." Leo's thumb, slippery with sweat and terror, tapped out the number. He knew it by heart. 555-019. Crash. A fist hit the bathroom door. The wood splintered. A hairline crack appeared right down the center of the white paint. Leo yelped, a tiny, pathetic sound that escaped before he could stop it. "Open this door, Leo!" Marcus screamed. "Open it or I swear to God I'll kick it down and drag you out by your hair!" Panic is a funny thing. It makes time slow down, but it makes your brain speed up until it shorts out. Leo wasn't thinking about the numbers anymore. He was thinking about his mom, lying on the carpet in the other room. Was she sleeping? Why wasn't she crying anymore? Moms always cry when they get hurt. Silence was worse. Silence meant broken. His thumb hit the last digit. He meant to hit 8. Grandpa's number ended in 8. But just as he pressed down, Marcus kicked the door. The entire frame shook, sending a bottle of shampoo tumbling into the tub next to Leo's head. Leo jumped. His thumb slid. He hit 9. He didn't check. He didn't look. He just hit send. Message sent. The little arrow swooshed away. Leo pulled his knees to his chest, clutching the phone like it was a religious artifact. He squeezed his eyes shut and started counting. Grandpa would get the text. Grandpa would call the police. Or Grandpa would get in his truck. He just had to wait. 1, 2, 3. Outside, Marcus was breathing heavy, resting his forehead against the wood. "You think you can hide from me? In a bathroom? There ain't no exits in there, boy." Leo stared at the phone screen, waiting for the 3 dots, waiting for read. He had no idea that his text hadn't gone to a retired mechanic in Ohio. It had traveled 20 miles west, bouncing off a cell tower on Rebellion Hill, and landed in the pocket of a leather vest draped over a chair in the clubhouse of the Hells Angels. Iron Ridge chapter. 20 miles away, the rain wasn't tragic. It was just loud. The clubhouse was a fortress of brick and steel, a converted warehouse that most of the town's polite society drove past, with their windows rolled up and doors locked. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of motor oil, grilled steak, and brotherhood. Dagger Thomas sat at the head of the long mahogany table. At 58 years old, Dagger was the president of the chapter, a title he'd held for 15 years. He looked like a mountain that had decided to grow a beard. His arms were thick cords of muscle covered in ink that told the story of a life lived on the edge. Names of brothers lost, dates of wars fought, and the winged skull that meant more to him than any flag. The room was low lit. A few prospects were cleaning the bar in the corner, moving silently so as not to disturb the patched members. Reaper was over by the jukebox, arguing with Chains about whether Johnny Cash was better than Waylon Jennings. Dagger rubbed his temples. He was tired. It had been a long week of negotiating territory lines with a rival club from the south and dealing with the city council about a noise ordinance. He wasn't looking for trouble tonight. He was looking for a cold beer and maybe 6 hours of sleep. His phone buzzed on the table. It was a sharp, angry vibration against the wood. Dagger ignored it. Probably his ex-wife asking about alimony, or a promoter trying to sell him tickets to a charity fight. It buzzed again. Then again. Dagger sighed, the sound like a tire deflating. He picked up the phone, squinting slightly. He refused to wear reading glasses in front of the boys, even if the text was blurry. He unlocked the screen. Unknown number. He almost deleted it. His thumb was hovering over the trash icon, but then his eyes caught the first 2 words. Grandpa help. Dagger froze. He didn't have grandkids. His daughter, Sheila, hadn't spoken to him in 10 years, not since he missed her wedding because he was sitting in a county jail cell for a fight he didn't start, but definitely finished. He read the rest. Marcus hurt Mom. She's on the floor and won't wake up. Dagger felt a cold drop of something that wasn't rain slide down his spine. He sat up straighter, the vertebrae popping. The noise in the clubhouse, the laughter, the pool balls clacking, the music, faded into a dull hum in his ears. There is blood. He is breaking the bathroom door. Please come now. This wasn't a prank. Kids don't prank like this. The spelling was too good in some places and too frantic in others. The lack of punctuation at the end. The desperation. Dagger knew desperation. He'd seen it in the eyes of men bleeding out on asphalt. He'd seen it in the faces of women he'd had to turn away because club rules said, "No domestic disputes." But this wasn't a domestic dispute. This was a slaughter in progress. And Grandpa? The kid had dialed the wrong number. Dagger looked at the timestamp. 11:16 p.m. 1 minute ago, the kid was still alive. For now. Dagger stood up. The chair scraped loud and harsh against the concrete floor. The sound cut through the room instantly. Reaper stopped talking mid-sentence. Chains looked up from his beer. When the president stood up like that, with that look on his face, a look that hovered somewhere between a funeral and a war, you paid attention. "Reaper," Dagger said. His voice was low, but it carried to the back of the room. "Kill the music." The jukebox went silent. The prospects stopped wiping the bar. "What is it, boss?" Reaper asked, stepping forward. He saw the phone in Dagger's hand, saw the way Dagger's knuckles were white around the black casing. Dagger didn't answer. He hit the call button on the screen. He put the phone to his ear. His heart, a muscle that had slowed down over the years, hammered against his ribs like a rookie on his first run. Ring, ring, ring. "Pick up," Dagger whispered. "Pick up, kid." Back in room 104, the phone vibrating in Leo's hand felt like a bomb. He stared at it. An unknown number was calling him back. Was it Grandpa? Grandpa had a different number, but maybe he was borrowing a phone? Maybe he was at a payphone. Leo looked at the door. The crack in the wood was wider now. He could see a sliver of the main room through it, just darkness and the flickering light of the TV. Marcus had stopped kicking. That was worse. When Marcus stopped kicking, it meant he was thinking. It meant he was going to get a tool. The phone kept buzzing. Bzzzt, bzzzt. If Leo answered, Marcus would hear him. If he didn't answer, help might not come. Leo made a choice. He was 10 years old, terrified, and unable to breathe. But he made the choice that grown men sometimes fail to make. He chose to trust. He swiped green. He didn't say hello. He couldn't. His throat was closed up with asthma and fear. He just held the phone to his ear and wheezed, a high-pitched rattling sound. "Hello?" A voice came through the speaker. It wasn't Grandpa. Grandpa's voice was high and reedy, like a wind chime. This voice was deep. It sounded like tires on gravel. It sounded like thunder. I... Leo tried to speak, but only a squeak came out. "Listen to me," the voice on the phone said. It was urgent, commanding, but strangely calm. "I got your text. You called the wrong number, son. I'm not your grandpa." Leo's world, which was already crumbling, dissolved into dust. Wrong number. He had sent his only lifeline to a stranger. He was going to die in this bathtub. Tears, hot and stinging, flooded his eyes. "Please," Leo whispered, the word barely audible. "He's gonna kill me." On the other end of the line, Dagger closed his eyes. That sound, that tiny, broken whisper. It tore through the tough leather of his soul and grabbed hold of the man underneath. "Nobody's going to kill you," Dagger said. He signaled to Reaper and Chains with a sharp wave of his hand. "We ride. Now." "What's your name, son?" "Leo," the boy sobbed. "Okay, Leo. My name is Dagger. I need you to be brave for me. Where are you? I need to know exactly where you are." "The motel," Leo gasped. The last stop, room 104. "The last stop? On Route 9? Yes. Is Marcus still there?" Leo held his breath. He listened. From the other room, He heard the metallic clink of a toolbox being opened. Marcus was a mechanic. He kept his tools by the door. He's getting the screwdriver, Leo whispered, his voice trembling so hard the phone shook against his ear. He's gonna take the hinges off. He says he's gonna take the door off. Okay? Dagger said. Leo, listen to me. Do not hang up. You keep this phone on. You hide it in your pocket if you have to, but don't hang up. I'm coming to get you. You are? I'm walking out the door right now. Me and my brothers. We're coming. Are you the police? Leo asked. Dagger looked at Reaper, who was already pulling a sawed-off pool cue from the rack, and Chains, who was checking the knife on his belt. He looked at the patch on his vest, the Death's Head grinning back at him. No, kid, Dagger said, swinging his leg over his Harley in the parking lot, the rain instantly soaking his shirt. We're something else. Dagger fired the engine. The roar of the 1800cc V-twin engine split the night, followed instantly by 6 others. It sounded like a dragon waking up in a bad mood. Hang on, Leo, Dagger shouted over the engine and the rain. Count to 1,000. Just count. We're on our way. But back in room 104, Leo watched the first hinge pin pop out of the bathroom door frame. Marcus laughed on the other side. Here comes the wolf, little pig, he slurred. Leo looked at the phone. Count to 1,000. 1, Leo whispered. Pop. The second hinge pin fell. 2. Marcus the Bull Grady was the kind of man who peaked in high school and had been punishing the world for it ever since. He stood 6'4", weighed 280, and tonight every ounce of that mass was vibrating with whiskey and bad luck. He looked at the betting slip under his boot. $500. Gone. That was the rent money. That was the grocery money. But in Marcus's twisted logic, it wasn't his fault the horse was slow. It was Shelley's fault. If she hadn't been nagging him about the electric bill this morning, he would have picked the other horse. Blame is a comfortable blanket for a coward. And Marcus was freezing. He turned back to the bathroom door. It was a hollow core door, the kind you can punch through if you try hard enough. But Marcus didn't want to punch through it. He wanted to take it apart. He wanted Leo to watch the barrier disappear, inch by inch. Terror, for men like Marcus, is the appetizer. You quiet in there, boy? Marcus taunted, jamming the screwdriver into the bottom hinge. You holding your breath? Inside the bathtub, Leo wasn't holding his breath. He was fighting for it. Wheeze, gasp, wheeze. It felt like someone had poured concrete into his chest. His inhaler, the blue rescue inhaler with the peeling sticker, was sitting on the sink counter. 4 feet away. It might as well have been on the moon. If he stood up to get it, his shadow would move under the door gap. Marcus would know exactly where he was. Leo looked at the phone in his lap. The call timer read 0214. Are you still there? Leo whispered into the speaker. The sound was barely a ghost of a voice. Through the static, through the rain, a voice came back. Solid. Anchored. I'm here, Leo. I'm right here. Dagger's voice was strained now, shouting over the wind. Talk to me. What's happening? He's popping the pins, Leo gasped. Bottom one is out. On the highway, Dagger's speedometer climbed past 90. The rain stung his face like needles, but he didn't flip his visor down. He needed to hear. He needed to hear every terrifying sound coming through that tiny speaker pressed against his ear inside the helmet. Stay low, Leo, Dagger commanded. Get in the tub if you aren't already. Pull the shower curtain. Make yourself invisible. I can't breathe, Leo cried softly. My chest. Dagger cursed. A long, colorful string of words that was lost to the wind. Asthma. The kid was having an attack. Leo, listen to me. Breathe with me. Slow. In. Out. You gotta calm down, son. Panic tightens the lungs. Look at your hand. Count your fingers. Focus on your fingers. Leo looked at his shaking hand. One thumb. One pointer finger. Bang. The middle hinge pin hit the floor outside. 2 down, Marcus yelled, his voice muffled by the wood, but clear enough to freeze Leo's blood. 1 to go, Leo. Then we're gonna have a little talk about respect. We're gonna talk about who runs this family. Family. The word hung in the humid air of room 104 like a bad joke. On the floor of the main room, Shelley Vance didn't hear the threat. She was lying on her side near the kitchenette, her blonde hair matted with blood where her head had met the corner of the TV stand. Her chest rose and fell in a shallow, uneven rhythm. She had tried. When Marcus started throwing plates, she had stepped in front of Leo. When Marcus raised his fist, she had taken the hit. She had screamed, "Run, baby, run!" And that was the last thing she remembered before the lights went out. Now she was just a heap of laundry on the floor. Another broken thing in a room full of them. Marcus didn't even look at her as he worked on the top hinge. To him, she was just an obstacle he had already cleared. His focus was entirely on the boy who had looked at him with those judging eyes, the boy who reminded him that he was a failure. "You think your grandpa is coming?" Marcus laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Old man Vance? He's 3 hours away, Leo. Even if he's in his truck right now, by the time he gets here, I'll be done. We'll be gone." He twisted the screwdriver. The paint on the top hinge cracked. Inside the tub, Leo squeezed the phone. "He says nobody can make it in time," Leo whimpered. "He's wrong," Dagger growled. "He's really big," Leo said, his voice fading as the black spots started to dance in his vision. The lack of oxygen was making his head swim. The room was tilting. "He's the bull." "I don't care if he's King Kong," Dagger said. And for the first time, Leo heard a different emotion in the biker's voice. It wasn't just concern. It was a cold, promised violence. "Leo, I need you to hold on for 3 minutes. Can you do that? 3 minutes. That's a commercial break. That's a song on the radio." 3, Leo wheezed. Clang. The top pin hit the floor. The door groaned. It was no longer attached to the frame. It was just a slab of wood held up by friction and gravity. Marcus took a step back. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He took a swig from the bottle of Jack Daniels sitting on the dresser. He savored the burn. He wanted this moment to last. "Ready or not," Marcus whispered. He lifted his boot and kicked. It wasn't a warning kick this time. It was a finishing move. The door didn't just open. It fell. It crashed inward, slamming against the bathroom tile with a sound like a gunshot. The noise was deafening in the small space. Dust and drywall flew into the air. Leo screamed. He couldn't help it. He curled tighter into the fetal position, pulling the plastic shower curtain over him like a shield, as if a thin sheet of vinyl could stop a monster. Marcus stepped into the bathroom. The frame was too small for him. He had to duck slightly. He loomed over the scene, breathing heavy, smelling of old booze and aggression. He saw the shower curtain trembling. He saw the blue inhaler on the sink. He swiped it off with a casual backhand. It clattered across the floor and slid behind the toilet, out of reach. "Found you," Marcus grinned. He reached for the curtain. On the phone, buried under Leo's ear, Dagger heard the crash. He heard the scream. He heard the heavy footsteps on the tile. And then, Dagger heard something else. He heard his own tires screeching as he drifted sideways off Route 9 and into the gravel lot of the Last Stop Motel. "Leo!" Dagger shouted into the phone. "I'm outside! I'm at the door!" But Leo couldn't answer. Marcus had ripped the shower curtain back. The plastic rings snapped, pinging off the walls. Leo looked up, eyes wide, lungs burning, staring straight into the red-rimmed eyes of the man who was supposed to take care of them. Marcus reached down, his hand massive, closing around Leo's pajama collar. "Give me that phone." Leo's grip tightened. "No." "I said give me the—" Marcus stopped. He stopped because the room suddenly wasn't dark anymore. Through the bathroom window, a small, frosted square of glass high on the wall, a light had appeared. It was blindingly bright. White, intense, and growing brighter. Then came the sound. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't rain. It was the low, guttural rumble of 7 Harley-Davidson engines idling directly outside the motel room window. The sound vibrated the toothbrush holder off the sink. It shook the floorboards under Marcus's boots. It was the sound of consequences arriving. Marcus froze, his hand still gripping Leo's collar. He looked at the window. "What the hell?" Then, the front door of room 104, the main door to the parking lot, didn't get knocked on. It didn't get kicked. It exploded. To understand what was about to happen at the last stop motel, you have to understand the men who were coming. 15 minutes earlier, the Iron Ridge Clubhouse had been a place of rest. But the moment Dagger stood up and said the words, "kid in trouble," the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a group of men who have seen combat. It's not the silence of hesitation. It's the silence of calibration. They were switching gears. "Reaper," Dagger barked, moving toward the heavy steel door. "Grab the crash kit. The text said the mom is down, won't wake up. That means head trauma or worse." Reaper didn't ask questions. The 68-year-old Vietnam veteran, a man who had treated shrapnel wounds in the jungle with nothing but duct tape and prayer, was already moving behind the bar. He pulled out a red canvas bag marked with a white cross. It wasn't a standard first aid kit with band-aids. This bag had tourniquets, clotting gauze, and airway tubes. "Chains," Dagger continued, not breaking stride. "You're on point. We don't know if this guy is armed. If he has a gun, you put him down. If he doesn't have a gun, you put him down harder." Chains, a man whose biceps were wider than most men's thighs, simply nodded. He reached into his locker and pulled out a heavy length of industrial chain with a padlock welded to the end. He looped it onto his belt. It was a crude weapon, medieval even, but in the close quarters of a motel room, it was more effective than a pistol. "What about the cops?" asked Tiny, a younger member who had only been patched in for 6 months. "If we roll up 6 deep and start breaking doors, the sheriff is going to be all over us." Dagger stopped. He turned, his hand on the door handle, rain already lashing against the metal from the outside. He looked at Tiny. "The sheriff is 20 minutes away," Dagger said, his voice flat. "That kid has maybe 5. You want to wait for the law, or you want to save a life?" Tiny grabbed his helmet. "I'm rolling." They moved into the parking lot like a single organism. 7 men. 7 machines. Dagger threw his leg over his custom softail. The bike was black, stripped of all chrome, designed to disappear in the dark. He plugged his phone into his helmet comms system. This was the lifeline. This was the thread connecting him to Leo. "Crank 'em!" Dagger shouted. The sound was physical. It hit you in the chest. 7 V-twin engines roared to life simultaneously, a synchronized explosion of fuel and air. The ground vibrated. Dagger didn't wait for the engine to warm up. He kicked it into gear and tore out of the lot, the rear tire spinning on the wet asphalt before catching traction. Riding a motorcycle in a storm at night is an act of faith. The rain hits your visor like gravel. The road markings disappear under the glare of oncoming headlights. Hydroplaning is a constant threat. One patch of oil, one slick spot, and you're sliding into a guardrail at 80 miles an hour. But tonight, nobody tapped the brakes. They rode in a flying V formation, dagger at the tip of the spear. They took up both lanes of Route 9. A semi-truck coming the other way flashed its high beams and blasted its horn, but the bikers didn't flinch. They held their line. The truck swerved onto the shoulder to let them pass. Inside his helmet, Dagger was listening to Leo's breathing. Wheeze, gasp. It sounded like a bellows with a hole in it. Every gasp was a struggle. Dagger's grip on the handlebars tightened until his leather gloves creaked. He wasn't just angry. He was haunted. 10 years ago, he had received a voicemail from his daughter, Sheila. She had been crying, asking for money to leave a bad boyfriend. Dagger had been busy. He had been handling club business. He called her back 2 days later. By then, she was gone. Moved out of state. Lost to him. He never forgave himself. He had protected this town, protected his brothers, protected his territory, but he hadn't protected his own blood. Not tonight, Dagger thought, leaning hard into a curve, the foot peg scraping sparks against the pavement. Not this time. 2 minutes out, Dagger shouted over the comms to his crew. Kill the lights when we hit the gravel. I want to blindside him. Copy. Reaper's voice crackled in his ear and the neon sign of the Last Stop Motel appeared in the distance. The M and the O were burned out, so it just read, Last Stop, Chantel. It looked like a graveyard with a vending machine. Dagger saw the layout immediately. It was a single-story strip of rooms. Room 104 was on the end. There was a beat-up Ford pickup parked in front of it. Marcus's truck. Reaper Tiny, block the exit, Dagger commanded. Chains on me. The rest of you, perimeter. If he rabbits out the back window, I want him caught before his feet touch the grass. The formation broke. It was a maneuver they had practiced 100 times, usually for evading police or rushing a rival gang. But tonight, the enemy was just one man in a dirty t-shirt. Dagger cut his engine just as he coasted into the lot. The other bikes followed suit. The sudden silence was jarring, replaced only by the hiss of tires on wet gravel. They rolled to a stop 10 yards from room 104. Dagger put his kickstand down. He didn't run. Running is for people who are panicked. Dagger walked. He walked with the heavy, measured stride of a man who is about to do violence and feels absolutely justified about it. He could hear it now. From the outside. Crash. The sound of the bathroom door falling. Scream. Leo's voice, high and terrified. Dagger's walk turned into a sprint, but not a chaotic sprint, a charge. He reached the front door of room 104. It was locked. A deadbolt. Chains was right beside him. Chains didn't bother with the lock. He stepped back, raised his size 14 boot, and drove his heel directly next to the doorknob. Crack. The door didn't just open. It disintegrated. The frame splintered, sending wood flying into the room. The wind and rain rushed into the room behind them, but the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that just walked in. Dagger stepped over the threshold, his eyes scanning the room in a millisecond. Woman down on the left, unconscious, blood, bad guy on the right, in the bathroom doorway, holding a kid. Marcus turned, blinking in the sudden light from the high beams outside. He looked at Dagger. He looked at the 6 other men crowding into the small doorway behind him, water dripping from their leather cuts, eyes hidden behind dark glasses or narrowed in pure disgust. Marcus dropped Leo's collar. His mouth opened. but no words came out. Dagger lowered his phone from his ear. He looked at the trembling boy in the bathtub. Then he looked at the giant man standing over him. "You must be the bull," Dagger said. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. "And we," Chains added, unhooking the heavy steel lock from his belt, "we're the slaughterhouse." There is a myth that bullies are brave. We see them loud, imposing, taking up space. But the physics of a bully are simple. They are only hard on the outside because they are hollow on the inside. Marcus Grady had spent his life terrifying women and children. He was big. He was loud. But when the door to room 104 exploded inward and 5 wet, leather-clad men stepped into his living room, Marcus shrank. He looked at the screwdriver in his hand. Then he looked at Chains. Chains was standing 3 feet away. He didn't have a weapon drawn. He didn't need one. He just stared at Marcus with the bored expression of a man who takes out the trash on Tuesdays. "Get out of my house," Marcus stammered. The alcohol in his system was suddenly fighting a losing battle against adrenaline. "This is private property. I'll call the cops." Reaper stepped past him, ignoring him completely. He went straight to Shelley, who was still crumpled on the floor by the kitchenette. He knelt down, his movements precise, checking her pulse, lifting her eyelids. "She's breathing," Reaper called out. "Pupils are uneven. Concussion. Maybe a bleed. We need a bus, now." "I said get out," Marcus roared, raising the screwdriver. He took a step toward Reaper. That was his mistake. You can threaten a biker. You can insult a biker. But you never, ever interrupt a medic working on a patient. Chains moved. It wasn't a cinematic karate kick. It was simple physics. He stepped inside Marcus's swing, grabbed the wrist holding the screwdriver, and twisted. Crack! Marcus screamed as the screwdriver clattered to the floor. Chains kicked the back of Marcus's knee, sending the big man crashing face first into the stained carpet. Before Marcus could scramble up, Chains planted a heavy boot in the center of his back, pinning him like a bug. "Stay," Chains said. It was the command you give a dog. In the bathroom, the war was different. It wasn't about fists. It was about air. Dagger filled the doorway. To Leo, whose vision was tunneling into gray static, Dagger looked like a giant shadow. A monster to replace the monster. Leo scrambled backward into the tub, his heels squeaking on the dry porcelain. He pulled the torn shower curtain up to his chin. His chest was heaving, but no air was getting in. His lips were turning a pale shade of violet. Wheeze. Dagger saw the terror in the kid's eyes. He saw the way Leo flinched when he stepped closer. Dagger did something then that most men wouldn't think to do. He dropped to his knees. He didn't care that the bathroom floor was covered in drywall dust, broken wood, and grime. He got down on the floor, lowering his head until he was lower than Leo. He took off his sunglasses. He took off his helmet, revealing a face that was weathered and scarred, yes, but eyes that were kind. "Leo," Dagger said. His voice wasn't the thunder anymore. It was a low rumble, soft and steady. "It's Dagger, the guy from the phone. Remember? I told you I was coming." Leo stared at him. He tried to speak, but only a dry click came from his throat. He pointed a shaking finger at his chest. "I know," Dagger said. "You can't breathe. We're gonna fix that." Dagger scanned the room. "Where's the inhaler, Leo?" Leo's eyes darted to the toilet. Dagger crawled forward. He reached behind the porcelain base. His hand, a hand that could crush a beer can effortlessly, fingered around the dust bunnies until he felt the smooth plastic of the actuator. He pulled it out. It was covered in dust. Dagger wiped it on his jeans, shook it once to prime it, and held it out. Okay, kiddo. On 3. You know the drill. Dagger moved into the tub. He didn't grab Leo. He didn't force him. He just sat on the edge of the porcelain, invading the space just enough to help. 1, 2, 3. Dagger pressed the canister as Leo gasped. The mist sprayed. Leo sucked it in. He held it. His small body shuddered, fighting the instinct to cough. Good job, Dagger whispered. Hold it. Let it work. Let it open everything up. A few seconds passed. Agonizing seconds. Then Leo exhaled, a long, shaky breath that sounded a little less like a whistle and a little more like life. 1 more, Dagger said, just to be safe. They did it again. Color started to return to Leo's cheeks. The panic in his eyes began to recede, replaced by exhaustion and confusion. He lowered the shower curtain. He looked at Dagger, really looked at him, taking in the patches, the beard, the rain dripping from his nose. Is my mom dead? Leo whispered. The question was so blunt, so heartbreakingly direct, that Dagger flinched. No, Dagger said firmly. Reaper is with her. Reaper is the best medic I know. He kept me alive in places a lot worse than this. And Marcus? Marcus is taking a nap, Dagger said, glancing toward the other room where Marcus was currently groaning under the weight of Chain's boot. He isn't going to hurt anyone tonight, or ever again. Leo slumped against the tile wall. The adrenaline was leaving his body, leaving him limp. He started to shiver. The adrenaline crash, combined with the cold dampness of the bathroom, was setting in. Dagger unzipped his leather vest, his cut. This was sacred property. You didn't let anyone touch your cut. It was the flag of your nation. Dagger took it off. It was heavy, warm from his body heat, and smelled like rain and leather. He wrapped it around Leo's shoulders. The vest was massive. It swallowed the 10-year-old boy whole. The president patch on the front hung down to Leo's knees. There, Dagger said, pulling the collar up around Leo's neck. Armor. It's heavy, Leo murmured, clutching the leather with both hands. It's supposed to be, Dagger smiled. World's a heavy place, kid. Sometimes you need a little help carrying it. Out in the main room, the sound of sirens finally cut through the storm. Blue and red lights began to flash against the rain-streaked window, mixing with the white headlights of the bikes. The sheriff was here. Tiny, who was standing guard at the door, turned to Dagger as he emerged from the bathroom, carrying Leo in his arms. Cops are here, boss, Tiny said. Sheriff Miller just pulled up. He looks pissed. Dagger adjusted Leo in his arms. The boy had buried his face in Dagger's t-shirt, refusing to look at Marcus as they walked past. Let him be pissed, Dagger said calmly. We did his job for him. Sheriff Miller, a man with a potbelly and a tired expression, burst through the shattered doorway, his service weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. He saw the scene immediately. The broken door. The unconscious woman being tended to by a biker. The massive assailant pinned to the floor by another biker. And the president of the Hells Angels standing in the middle of it all, holding a child wrapped in his colors. Miller holstered his gun. He sighed. He knew Dagger. They went back 20 years. Dagger, Miller nodded. You want to tell me why you tore my town apart at midnight? Wrong number, Dagger said, not stopping as he walked toward the door. Kid texted me by mistake. Said he needed help. Miller looked at Marcus on the floor, then at the blood on the carpet. Looks like he was right. He's got asthma, Dagger said, nodding to the boy in his arms. And his mom needs a trauma center. Marcus there, he slipped. Fell on the floor, couple of times. Chains lifted his boot off Marcus's back and stepped away, hands raised innocently. Miller looked at Dagger. He looked at the way the boy was clinging to the biker's shirt. "Get the kid to the ambulance," Miller said gruffly, stepping aside. "I'll handle the paperwork. But Dagger?" Dagger paused at the threshold, the rain hitting his face again. "Yeah?" "Don't leave town," Miller warned. "I'm not going anywhere," Dagger replied. "Neither is the kid." Dagger carried Leo out into the night. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The air felt cleaner out here. "You okay up there, Leo?" Dagger asked. Leo looked out from the folds of the leather vest. He looked at the row of motorcycles. He looked at the ambulance pulling in. "I'm okay," Leo whispered. He wasn't, not really. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. Hospitals have a specific smell at 2 a.m. It's a mix of floor wax, old magazines, and anxiety. It's a place where time stops, where you barter with God, promising to be better if he just lets the doctor walk through those double doors with good news. Leo sat in a teal plastic chair that was 3 sizes too big for him. He was still wearing his pajamas. He was still wrapped in Dagger's leather cut. The vest was a fortress. He hadn't taken his hands off the lapels since they left the motel. Dagger sat next to him. In this clean, white world of nurses and clipboards, Dagger looked like a tear in the fabric of reality. His boots were muddy. His jeans were stained with grease. He still had road grit on his face. People stared. A nurse at the station kept glancing over, hand hovering near the phone. A security guard walked by twice, eyeing the Hell's Angels patch on the back of Reaper, who was standing guard by the vending machines like a gargoyle. But Dagger didn't care about them. He was watching Leo. The boy was staring at his sneakers. He wasn't crying anymore. He was vibrating, a low, constant tremor of shock. Dagger stood up. His knees popped. "Thirsty?" Leo didn't look up. He just shrugged, a tiny movement inside the heavy leather. Dagger walked to the vending machine. He fished a crumpled dollar bill from his pocket. He didn't buy a soda. He bought a hot chocolate. The machine whirred and spit out a paper cup filled with brown sludge that smelled vaguely of sugar. He walked back and sat down. He held the cup out. "It's terrible," Dagger said softly. "But it's warm." Leo looked at the cup. His hands emerged from the vest, fingers still trembling. He took it. He took a sip. The heat seemed to ground him, pulling him back from wherever his mind had drifted. "Is she gonna wake up?" Leo asked. He was staring at the steam rising from the cup. "She's gonna wake up," Dagger said. He didn't know that for sure. But he knew that sometimes a lie is the only armor a kid has. "Reaper said her vitals were strong. Mothers are tough, Leo. They're built different." "Marcus said I was weak," Leo whispered. "Because of the asthma." Dagger felt a flash of anger so hot it almost burned, but he kept his voice level. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, bringing his face down to Leo's level. "Look at me." Leo looked up. "You know what I saw tonight?" Dagger asked. "I saw a guy twice your size with a weapon. And I saw a 10-year-old kid who couldn't breathe, who was terrified, and who still had the guts to send a text. You didn't run, you didn't hide under the bed, you called for backup." Dagger pointed a calloused finger at Leo's chest. "That's not weak, Leo. That's a warrior. Most grown men I know would have folded." Leo blinked. A single tear escaped, cutting a clean line through the dust on his cheek. He wiped it away quickly with the sleeve of the leather vest. "I like your vest," Leo sniffled. "It smells like rain." "Keep it," Dagger said. "For now." The double doors at the end of the hall swung open. Dr. Aris, a young trauma surgeon with tired eyes, walked out. He looked at his clipboard, then at the odd pair sitting in the waiting area, the biker and the boy. Dagger stood up immediately. Leo scrambled to his feet, clutching the cup. "Family of Shelley Vance?" Dr. Eris asked. "Here," Dagger said. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. It was a claiming gesture. "We are with her." "She's stable," the doctor said, and Dagger felt Leo's shoulders drop 3 inches as the tension left his body. "She has a severe concussion and a fractured rib, and she needed 12 stitches on her scalp. But the CT scan is clear. No brain bleed. She's waking up." Leo dropped the cup. Hot chocolate splattered on the linoleum, but nobody cared. "Can I see her?" Leo begged. "Please?" The doctor hesitated. He looked at the biker. He looked at the clock. Visiting hours were over 5 hours ago. 5 minutes, the doctor sighed. "She's groggy. Be quiet." Dagger nudged Leo forward. "Go. I'll be right here." Leo ran down the hall, the oversized vest flapping behind him like a superhero cape. Dagger watched him go. He stayed behind. He knew his place. He was the shield, not the family. He sank back into the plastic chair and rubbed his face with both hands. He was exhausted. His back hurt. He wanted a cigarette. Reaper walked over, handing him a black coffee. "You did good, boss," Reaper grunted. "We got lucky," Dagger muttered, taking the coffee. "Wrong number. 1,000,000 to 1 shot." "Ain't no such thing as luck," Reaper said, looking down the hall where Leo had disappeared. "Universe puts you where you need to be, even if you don't want to be there." Dagger looked at his phone. The text message was still there. "Grandpa, help." He thought about his own daughter again. He thought about the calls he missed. He couldn't fix the past. He couldn't save his relationship with Sheila. That bridge had burned down a decade ago, but tonight, in a cheap motel on Route 9, he had answered the phone. And for the first time in 10 years, the silence in Dagger's soul wasn't quite so loud. Justice is a slow machine, but when it finally grinds into gear, it is beautiful to watch. Marcus the Bull Grady didn't look like a bull when he stood in front of Judge Hallowell 3 months after the incident. Without his whiskey, without a door to kick down, and without a terrified woman to bully, he looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had made a career out of hurting people who couldn't fight back. The defense attorney tried to argue that it was a crime of passion, a domestic misunderstanding. But the jury didn't see a misunderstanding. They saw the photos of Room 104. They saw the medical report detailing Shelley Vance's concussion. And they saw the transcript of a text message sent by a 10-year-old boy begging for his life. 15 years. No parole for 10. When the gavel came down, it sounded like the bathroom door at the motel, a final decisive bang. But this time, the sound didn't mean danger. It meant it was over. Marcus was led away in handcuffs, and for the first time in her life, Shelley Vance didn't flinch when a man raised his voice. She was too busy looking at her son. Recovery isn't a straight line. It's a winding road. For the first month, Leo slept with the light on. He flinched when doors slammed. He kept his inhaler in his pocket every second of the day, tapping it like a nervous tick. But Dagger didn't disappear. The Hell's Angels' Iron Ridge chapter had a new rule, unwritten but understood. The Vances were off limits to the world, but they were family to the club. Shelley got a job running the front office at Wrench's Auto Body, a shop protected by the club. It wasn't charity. She was good at it. She organized the books, managed the schedules, and for the first time, she had a paycheck that nobody could take from her to gamble on horses. And Leo? Leo was learning that not all big men are monsters. Dagger walked up the driveway. He was holding a small cardboard box. "You missed a spot," Dagger said, pointing to the rear fender of his bike, which Leo had been scrubbing. Leo grinned. The asthma hadn't gone away. It never would completely, but he stood taller now. The fear was gone from his eyes, replaced by a quiet confidence. "I didn't miss it," Leo shot back. "I was saving the best for last." Dagger laughed. A real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He knelt down on the concrete, ignoring the soapy water soaking into his jeans. "I got something for you," Dagger said. He handed Leo the box. Leo wiped his hands on his jeans and opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a piece of leather. It wasn't a full cut. Leo wasn't a member. That had to be earned when he was 18, if he chose this life. This was a custom vest, sized for a 10-year-old. On the front, right over the heart, was a small patch. It didn't say president or enforcer. It read, "Little Brother." "Reaper stitched it himself," Dagger said, his voice dropping to that gentle rumble Leo remembered from the phone call. "It means you got 23 uncles watching your back. It means you never have to hide in a bathroom again. You understand?" Leo ran his fingers over the embroidery. "Little brother." He looked up at Dagger. "Does this mean I have to clean your bike every Saturday?" "That's the price of admission, kid," Dagger winked. Shelley came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She watched the scene. The feared biker president and her son, talking heads close together, discussing chrome polish and life. She smiled. It was the smile of a woman who knew she was finally safe. We live in a world that loves to put labels on people. Outlaw, criminal, victim. But labels are just stickers. They peel off when it rains. The truth is, family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes family are the people who answer the phone in the middle of the night. Family poi are the ones who ride through a storm because you asked them to. Leo Vance dialed a wrong number that night. He missed his grandfather by 1 digit. But looking at him now, standing in the sun, safe and loved, you have to admit something. It wasn't a wrong number. It was exactly the right one. If you believe that real strength is used to protect the innocent, hit that like button. If you believe that every child deserves to feel safe in their own home, share this story. And remember, when the world gets dark, look for the helpers. Sometimes they're riding Harleys. Thanks for watching, Gentle Bikers. See you on the next ride.